Welcome to the Lender Lounge, and today I'm excited to announce that we are starting a new series. We're going to call this Strike Point Strategies, and what we're going to do with this series is teach you and show you how to be a more educated and confident buyer in the home buying process. And today I have my counterpart, my team member, Misty Matisons. She's a local real estate agent, broker in the area, and we are going to team up on this and, again, help you navigate this crazy world of home buying and wealth building. So welcome. We're going to go over an outline and kind of just set the tone of where we're going and the things we're going to dive into. So join us for this hour. Be sure to give us a like and subscribe so you keep up with the content. And let's get into it. Hi, Misty. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're finally doing this.
We are. We've talked about it for a while. This idea came about when the market started to drop off. We talked about how people were starting to hold first-time home buyer classes. And the first thing I said was, how are we going to get people to come in after work on a Tuesday or a Saturday or a Sunday? We're not. And I said, but, we're all guilty of sitting on the couch, laying in bed, watching videos on our phone. So we decided, let's roll this out to the convenience of our consumers, our clients. And here we are.
Yeah.
We're here to set expectations, educate you, build your confidence, and more importantly, make you understand the entire process of buying a home, which is one of the largest purchases you're going to make. And each time you buy or sell, it's a different animal. So you're going to learn something, whether you've purchased or not, or if it's your first time. But we're here to begin the entire series for the year to roll out as much information to our clients.
Awesome. So let's talk about where we came from. Let's go over the last 3 years, because I feel like since the shutdown, that pandemic, in the last 3 years, we saw some anomalies that have never happened in the real estate market. And
could never happen again, right?
You're right. Yeah, there's that too. So let's start kind of where we came from and where we are now and where it's going, just to give you an idea of what to expect. And we really need to back up to tell you why we're here right now. So we're going to go back through a little bit of history, and this will be fun. I love going down this path. So let's start. So 2020, 21, 22. In 2020, we had the pandemic, February 2020, and we saw interest rates hit an all-time low. And that had so many people jumping off the fence, getting into real estate, buying homes, and the affordability was insane, such a great opportunity to buy homes.
It became a complete frenzy. Yes. Everywhere across the country.
For sure. I know I was busy. A lot of us had our record year that year. And then 21 hit and we saw record appreciation, super competitive. And then into 22, we saw it more competitive. I mean, we were going, 90, 100 grand over listing, and and we're still seeing that in some areas, competitive markets. And then 23, I'm going to say it. I'm glad we're done with 23. Yeah. that was a challenging year for a lot of people. And
I think we all knew it, though. I knew by the end of 22, I kept saying, this is where a real estate broker over the last couple of years is really going to start to earn their money, because it is not going to be an easy year. We're going to have, we still have a ton of buyers, but it's a different demographic of buyers. It's the people that got left behind during the pandemic that couldn't take advantage of those low interest rates, and mainly because they weren't prepared. They weren't ready to become home buyers. And that's really what this series is about. Is it doesn't matter what market we're in, what's happening. There's always a time to become a home buyer, and we're gonna teach you how to navigate through that through 24
and beyond.
And beyond. Let's
little
do
Buzz
it.
Lightyear reference there. Yeah, love it. So let's talk about 23 a little bit, because 23, when we say it's a challenging market, and you may not know this, but we saw the highest interest rates in a long time. We also saw
low inventory,
and then we also saw home prices that were high. So affordability was the lowest on record.
Well, and as a broker, negotiations were very different this last year. There were a lot of unrealistic expectations on the price of a home for a listing. You had buyers, because of the high interest rates, definitely wanted to negotiate. So this is where a lot of people didn't see eye to eye. Mm-hmm. A lot of things had to go on behind the scenes in order to close a deal.
Yeah,
more
you're
than
right.
the last 2-3 years before.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree with that. So let's talk about 24. There's some great expectations for 24. We're already starting to see lower interest rates, where they're starting to trend down, even just from the last, Q3, Q4 of 23. So we were seeing more buyers hop off the fence. Just in the first week, I know I've talked with other agents and other mortgage professionals that I'm friends with, and just that first year was like after Christmas, and then that first year of January, it was like a free for all. Like the phone's ringing off the hook again.
January 3rd, I started picking up new buyers. People, they're starting to, understand that this market, if interest rates, start to decrease this year, and I understand we still will probably have some low inventory. It's going to be a little bit different the last couple of years, but it is going to be challenging. And if you can get ahead of the summer frenzy, especially in the greater Seattle area, you're onto something. So I know typically January, February for the greater Seattle area can be a little bit quiet, but I don't think that's going to be the pace this year.
Yeah, I don't see it. Not for me anyway. Mm-hmm. And then, it's a little slower till the spring market, and then we got the summer and all that. But yeah, it's going to be a market to keep us on your toes. And that's why we're doing this, because we want you to be prepared. So we were talking and I gave the analogy. It's like, okay, I know like summer's coming up, right? And so we're going to be in board shorts and bathing suits and bikinis and stuff. Well, you start getting ready now. You start preparing for this now. And same thing, like a wedding. You wouldn't go into a wedding without being absolutely prepared. All the checks and balances are there. So that's what we're here to do, is help you with that, again, so that you are confident in your decision. And we're going to also tell you things that a lot of people don't talk about. We're going to prepare you for things that can go wrong in the transaction. So we're going to cover a lot in this series. And again, this one is just to kind of give you a broad view. We are going to touch on quite a few things, but to give you a general idea of where we're going and what we're going to touch on. And I think it's going to be super fun. I'm excited.
And breaking down the details of, the nuances of a transaction. Transactions are very much like humans or snowflakes. Every single one is different. You will never have two alike. You won't.
No, you're right. So, let's go. So let's start. So we're going to see in 24, better affordability. Again, lower rates, home prices in some areas will be lower. And that's the crazy thing. We've talked about this. Like, I feel like a few years ago, you could make a general statement, and that was kind of across the board for real estate. And now I know, especially in our market up here, where, it's different in each zip code.
Yeah, even in an area.
Right.
There's areas that are still getting above ask, multiple offers, a lot of cash, and there's areas that have a lot more negotiation room. It all depends on where it is, the property, the house. Was it priced appropriately? Everything's going to be based on circumstances this year. Each circumstance.
Yep. And again, to be prepared is not a bad thing.
No, it's not a race. It's a marathon. Most people, especially a first-time home buyer, or if you haven't purchased or sold in a long time, there's a lot of preparation in our realm of the process that you're not aware of. And this is where we encourage you. If you think that you're not ready to buy a home and maybe it will be later in the year, we still should be talking right now. We need to be talking about your finances. How can we make them better? We really need to hone in on your actual needs a lot sooner than later so that we are so prepared when the time comes to pull the trigger. That's what this is about, is strategy.
Yeah, and also I want to, like, there's people that do it backwards, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So, and by purchasing a home backwards, meaning, you know, you're sitting in bed, you get off work and you've had dinner and you're chilling out, and then you're just scrolling through your phone and you're like, that ad pops up and you're like, that house is amazing, I want to live in that. You click on it, and then you're down this rabbit hole of looking at homes. You're falling in love and you're like, oh, I want this. I love the area. I want to go after it. And then, so you call the realtor that's on the phone, you know, it's there, and you call them.
Go see this home.
I want to see it, you know, and you get there, and then they pair you up with their lender, or you go and shop for a lender, and then the lender says, oh, well, you know, you've got some work to do, like you don't qualify for this, and it takes the wind out of your sails. And it's, in my experience, I've seen that, and then when, you know, they do talk to me, we've got to put that wind back in. So it's kind of a reset. And so that's what we're trying to help you avoid, is that disappointment as a first-time home buyer. Not saying it's wrong. It is not the best way, especially in this market. We have the real estate market that's changing, and also the way people are buying and selling is changing. And so being well prepared is key. And so we've got a few things to go through to talk about preparations, like what that looks like. And I want to start with that. So let's talk with a little bit about our process too.
Okay.
Now you and I, we've had, I want to say, flawless transactions, you know?
We have. And there's always behind the scenes twists and turns, but we have been incredibly proud of the job that we have completed for our clients, whether it's been, you know, selling in a buy, or a buy, relocation, coming into the area new, whatever it is. We have work together very flawlessly on understanding our clients' needs and the road to success in them becoming a homeowner. I'll be honest, you just made a comment, and this has happened to me. I'm not going to be your broker if you call me, want to look at a house tomorrow, and we don't understand your buying power. And it's not that you're wasting my time. I'm willing to go down that road. It's going to give me an idea of what you want to look at in the future, but you're wasting the seller's time, and that cannot be done. You have to have a lot more appreciation for their needs, their side of the process, and that's what we want to tell you. You know, if you're a buyer, you're not a seller. If you're a seller, you're not a buyer. You really need to understand each side of the process.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't think, you know, when you put an offer on a home, let's talk about like someone puts an offer in and then they cancel it back. So let's talk about what happens on the other side of that. So you put an offer in, and that seller, you get under contract, and the seller's like, yes, great, I got a buyer. You're going through your due diligence. Well, that seller's also preparing. They may need to use those proceeds to buy the next home. So they start prepping to move. They start boxing things up, and they're excited. Kids, family, like, we're moving, this is happening. And then you back out. And so there's that can happen too. And so we want to avoid that.
And we'll eventually get into the details of how that affects the seller for the long run when it goes back on the market.
Right. Yep. I'm excited for that. Well, so let's talk about the consultation. So we're going to go through consultation, then an understanding buying power, and the application process. But first, let's talk about the consultation.
That is our role to come in and conduct a thorough needs analysis. We just don't need to know, I need a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,500 square foot home. You know, these are the amenities I want. There's a lot more details around your needs. We want to understand, do you work remotely? Do you need to commute? You know, typical areas, or, you know, there's going to be a lot of other factors that could potentially change your search. And I think it's really important to understand. Typically what happens in real estate is you have some unrealistic expectations of what you want and can afford on a home. And, that gets funneled down to, well, this is your reality. We want to shorten that up to understand your needs a little bit more, so that cone's a little bit shorter.
Right.
That we're understanding before the process starts to execute efficiently, flawlessly, and really work hard for you as a team.
Yeah, it's super important to understand all those aspects. And sometimes, like in our consultations, you've been there too with clients, where during that consultation, we uncover things that they didn't even know about themselves. They didn't know why they wanted to buy a home. And I say this all the time, you're going to know what you're buying, how, and why. Those are the three important things up front. And,
well, we've also had the experience of, there's two buyers. They have two separate expectations. That means you don't know what you want yet. And we need to understand that before we start the process. And that is for your best benefit. I think it is fair to say that prior to us being homeowners, there's so much you don't know. And if you don't know what questions to ask. That's where we want to come in and fill in the gaps during this series, to tell you about all the things that come up during this process that you would never anticipate or know to ask, right?
Right. And I mean, they don't teach this in school. So the financial education and, they come into this blindly, So one thing that I like to do is, if someone comes, hey, I want to go see this house immediately, like, we'll go do that. But as quickly as they're wanting to go see that house, I'm trying to schedule that consultation. It's like,
you're putting the cart before the horse.
Right. And they may not know that.
Right, they don't.
Yeah,
no,
they don't know that that's what's
happening. In our eyes,
happening.
it doesn't make any sense. Allow us the time to understand your needs, your buying power, and hit the ground a lot more effectively, right? One thing that I think is very unique about us is, in a lot of cases, in most cases, you're going to have a consultation with a broker and a lender separately. And that's not really how we like to do things. We like to conduct that consultation together. It takes a team to get through a transaction. And if we aren't working intrinsically in the very beginning, step one, there's going to be, possible lack of communication, things falling between the cracks. We are here to make sure that we minimize anxiety, stress,
as much as possible. And that's one thing that I appreciate about when I see you, when we're working together with a client, is that our communication is watertight. It's great. Like, I know that I can communicate with you, all cards on the table, and you, the same way. And we've become, super good friends.
We trust each other.
Right. Yep. And, we know each other's
important.
families.
That's important.
And
so in a lot of real estate transactions, you may have a broker that you've never met and a lender you've never met. But their relationship together is very important. If a broker and a lender are working together, which happens all the time, that they don't know each other, I don't know if I could trust him. Is he going to help me get to the finish line? And he's going to feel the same way. But that's what we're here to unveil.
Yeah. So consultation, that's the first thing, super important for that.
And the reason for the importance is it takes a very impeccable strategy to do this the right way. And we want you to trust us to take that lead and not just start shooting off at the hip. Hey, here's a house, let's go look, put in an offer. I'm never going to be that broker that you call me, we don't know each other, and you want an offer within an hour. If that broker comes up in your life, they wouldn't be my broker.
Yeah. I mean,
they're not
it
prepared at all. Not prepared at all. This is the most important purchase, especially the first one. And they will always be the most important, most expensive purchase. So being prepared, understanding the process, being educated along the way, setting expectations, realistic expectations are so vital.
Yeah. And not to sound mean or, but there are times like when you find a realtor online, it's, whatever the avenue is. And then let's say you've got already have a lender and they've never worked with each other. And so they're trying to figure out communications. And sometimes it doesn't vibe, I've had, that does happen, so.
It takes a million lines to come together with a large amount of people in a real estate transaction for everyone to get to the finish line.
Yep.
And in most cases, as a home buyer, I don't think you understand how many people are involved. You may be the lender determining the buying power, but how many people are behind you on a team? How many people are behind me for support?
Right.
And then we're talking about the other side of the transaction.
Title and escrow.
Appraisers.
The inspection.
Yes. Everybody has to work together.
Yep. And
more importantly, we have to manage that process to make sure that the wheels don't fall off.
Yep. 100%. So understanding buying power during that consultation, I know I go deep into understanding your buying power, and just basically the first, few minutes is just education. And so the buying power means how much can you afford? What purchase price can you afford? And
sometimes it's not what they think. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less.
Right. We got some work to do.
Here's one mistake that most people make in real estate, and I've been there. As a first-time home buyer, I said, "Oh, I'm not ready." And I don't know what knowledge I had to make me realize that I wasn't ready, and guess what? I was. I did not know that. I don't think that I fully understood my credit score at that time. I don't think I, understood my debt to income, my amount of, that I was making, all of those things that are super key in your buying power. I had to rely on a very competent professional to be able to tell me, you're ready. And guess what? I was. I didn't know it. If that was up to me, probably would have never happened. Even after becoming a broker and going through a refinance, and I said, "Oh, I'm not ready to do it." No, I was. So I always want to speak on, the fact that we've experienced this stuff. We've been first-time home buyers. I don't want anybody to go through this highly important process and not understand what they're doing. How many of us, and in our world, we deal with contracts all day, every day, and it's something that's very, very normal to us. But how many of us go drive a car for 10 minutes and we sign 30 pages of stuff and don't really understand, and nobody's telling you what you're actually signing.
Right.
That's not how we want to do this.
Office.
Right.
Yep.
We want you to understand. We want to provide enough information that it'll prompt new questions.
Yeah. And another important piece to that, the buying power, is, let's say you get your max approval. So knowing what you're approved for, and then also knowing what you want to budget for, what your budget allow for. And a lot of times, being in the middle is great because it gives you some leeway. If you put an offer on a home and you get into a competitive situation where you're up against multiple offers, and you can go another 5, 10, 15 plus above somebody else,
If you're at the top of your budget,
you're stuck.
If there's 4 offers, you're probably not going to make it because you don't have any additional wiggle room. These are all strategies behind the scenes that we need to talk about prior to the offer.
Yeah. And we saw a lot of that in 22. Mm-hmm. That was, we'll talk a little bit more about the purchase strategies in a competitive market up against, multiple offers. We had one purchase in 22, Megan and Thomas, and, that was great. where the listing agent was like, I've never seen an offer structure like this. What, and we won it. And
we made it to the finish line
14 days. The seller was worried about.
They were first time home buyers and they didn't know the process at all. We educated them along the way, and
yeah, that was great. And also we delivered. The seller was very concerned about closing early because they had one that had also fallen through, and there was some urgency there. And, in 14 days,
it's our job to understand the seller's needs as well.
Let's talk. Yeah. Let's touch on that, because there's times where
as a broker, if we're looking at a specific house, all of the circumstances change if it's vacant, if there's a renter, if there's a homeowner. Are they moving across town or out of state? Understanding what the seller needs could really help you out in a competitive market, which we believe we're going to see this year.
Yep. And maybe we're the only ones that ask, hey, what does the seller need? Do they need a rent back for 2 weeks?
And if we're addressing that in the offer, those are items that could, get our offer accepted.
Yeah. So it is very important to understand what the seller needs as well, and use that as your leverage in your offer situation too. So application process, that's scary to some people.
It
to
is.
get them to start.
I have a lot of people say, oh, I don't want to fill out an application. I don't want my credit pulled.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. We can provide you a ton of information even prior to the application process. Once you go through the application process and understand your buying power, then we've honed in on, the beginning stages of your search.
Yeah. And, a lot of people don't know there's a soft pull and a hard pull. And, those are some options as well.
Jeremy and I have a great example of buyers that we had. They were buyers recently married that were moving into the area from another region of the state, completely different, and they had already been pre-approved with their financial institution. They were not getting anywhere with their financial institution to be able to understand their exact buying power. And they were very frustrated. They weren't really getting callbacks, blah, 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 unresponsive. And I said, listen, I have a lender that I work with. I trust explicitly, Jeremy, blah, 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 blah. Let's introduce you. And as a team, with two individuals that we did not know, we unveiled their needs, and there were items that I don't believe that initial financial institution would have ever determined. And what they wanted to do was move up here to retire and not have a house payment. And they were ready to put a bunch of cash down. And we said, no. Let's rethink this. So why don't you talk about how that conversation went and where you took them, and we'll talk about the result of it.
Yeah, that's great. So when you called me and you said, hey, I've got this couple, they're pre-approved with their financial institution. It's not going well. They're falling short on expectations.
Dragging their feet.
So I reach out and just kind of, well, what do you guys want to do? What do you want to accomplish? And it was a little bit of a complicated situation because they had a house that they had to sell. Mm-hmm. They were going to use those proceeds to get into to move up, mm-hmm. really. And they were looking for their home, forever home.
Yep. Dream home.
And so in the course of the conversation, he brought up that he was working with a financial advisor. And I reached out. I said, hey, would you mind if I had that phone number? Can I reach out to your financial advisor? They had a established relationship, and what I told them was, I want to talk with him because you've already got an established relationship. You've got your goals and a trajectory that you're on. I want to make sure that what we're doing on this mortgage side of things, that strategy is in line with your goals already set.
Don't take that opportunity away from your financial advisor.
No. And now, I lean on the guy periodically. And so I had a conversation with the financial advisor, and he loved that I was reaching out and just kind of talk through some things. And I said, here's my strategy. Here's what I'm thinking. And it was a really cool conversation with that financial advisor. And then we were able to have a conference call with the buyers, and it was just great. Everybody was on the same page. And ultimately, instead of putting all the cash down into the home, between us and the financial advisor, we were able to set up a strategy where they bought this home and
they invested their money with a financial advisor instead of dumping the cash onto the house. They invested with their financial advisor, and that, the details of that is, between them and their financial advisor. That investment is now paying their mortgage. So we met their needs of not having a house payment, but so much more beneficial for them to be, growing their money, not just outside of the equity of their house.
And the relief that, wow, this is amazing.
They did not want to dump all that cash in there.
And they didn't want to pay me because they wanted to travel. Like they're starting a new chapter in their life, and they wanted to travel a lot. And this helps fund that.
They're building equity in their house. They are, they're making money on their investment. And again, no house payment.
Yeah.
And they're incredibly happy.
And they're great people. Yeah. I'm excited. Yeah. Reach out to them again. So that's just one example of when we talk strategy, and the conversations we need to be having is, I'm going to ask you, do you have a financial advisor? If not, I'm going to pair you up with one. But just understanding all the details and the needs of you, and then us having to communicate and talk about how we're going to structure that, how we're going to make the offer, how we're, there's so much that goes into that.
It's an elevated experience with us because we're just not going to get you pre-approved and find you a house and go through the transaction and send you on your way. We want to help you build wealth for the future. We want to educate you. We want to have you walk away with a ton of knowledge of your purchase.
Yeah. And some people don't even understand what wealth building is.
Right.
Until we get into this and then show them how to leverage your equity.
Is the first step into building wealth.
Yeah. Yep. Love it. So that's the application process. And then, so during that application process, what we're going to do is we're going to collect your W-2s, your pay stubs, taxes if we need. If you're self-employed, we're going to do your taxes, business and personal, profit and loss. So there's a lot of documentation that goes up front during that approval process, but it allows us to get an in-depth look and then dial in the numbers and then help you make that decision. Again, here's your max approval. Now, what do you want your budget to be? So in that application process is the approval part, and that's exciting, So, again, knowing what and why and how you're buying the home that you're buying. So, and then with us communicating, like during the approval process, when I call you and I'm like, hey, we need a little bit more work on this. Here's what we're looking for. I like that you're also stepping into that and helping and guide. We've been working with each other long enough to know, how I'm going to talk, the questions I'm going to ask. I know the questions you're going to ask. And so,
but I also want to understand my buyers' lending needs, not just this is how much we want to spend.
Right.
That's if a broker only wants to understand how much you can spend, I don't really think that they have your best interests. We work together with precision. So being able to understand even before we put in an offer, hey, let's look at numbers in a few different ways before we present to the buyer to understand how we can kind of which one of these would be the best offer, feel out the listing broker, and see how we can come in. During a frenzied market in 22, we were able to help some other clients sell and purchase, and that is always a very stressful experience. We were able to sell high, and we were able to negotiate with some equity. So when they moved, they had equity in their new house, They got a lot more for their property they sold than what they anticipated. There's a lot of details that, really need to go into the process to make sure that we have your best interests at heart.
I remember that. And so and the other thing too is, moving from a condo in the middle of the city, and there was other listings in that condo unit, and people told us like, it's not going to go. You gotta lower the price.
So much higher. And you know why? I think those listing brokers just didn't, I don't think they did their due diligence. It's sold.
And you can get caught up in the hustle and bustle, and that's where, even though it's in a fast moving market, to take the time again, and we moved quickly, but it was the level of the questions and the conversations we were having with the clients, with the buyers, that helped overall make that happen, to get that condo. And when it sold, everyone was surprised, and so
at the amount that we sold.
So the other thing too was there was some urgency to get into the next home, and now they have the quality of life is higher.
She moved into the condo single and moved out of the condo as a family into a home in a rural area. That's what they were ready for, the next step. So and that whole process was very stressful for them, managing, jobs, family, moving out of the area, everything. We had to take all of that into consideration. There's so many details in every part of the process, and you really have to be very meticulous.
Absolutely. So let's say now you're approved. Okay, you've done all the work. Your lender says you're approved. You know how much you are qualified for, and then now you start the search process. What does that look like?
I want to understand what's going on in your life to meet your needs. Every buyer is going to be different. You're going to have buyers that are going to want to see every single house that they're interested in. You're going to have buyers that are so incredibly busy they can't. For instance, I would love to go look at 10, 12 houses. I'm going to send you houses. You're going to send me houses. We're going to narrow it down. I'm going to go look at 10, 12 houses in a day or so. And I'm going to take video. I'm going to send pictures, and I'm going to give you my feedback. Did the house present well online? Did it not present well? These are things that you can't see in pictures. And then, you may come back and say, these are the 4 houses we want to see. Well, that's us trying to accommodate your needs and convenience. We're going to do it however you need, whatever makes you feel comfortable.
Yep. And then those four houses, when you whittle it down, then now we're talking numbers. Let's run numbers on those 4 homes, compare and talk through that. And then that's where
the listing broker, what has been the interest on the house? Do you have any offers? Do you have any verbal offers coming in? What's the flexibility on price? How would they feel about seller concessions? Do they need a rent back? And asking all of those questions, doing a needs analysis on the seller and with the listing broker is going to give you a better idea of how you would strategize to buy that house, or whether it's that house or house number 2 or 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. What else is important in that search process, as far as, your strategy, how you're going to buy it, and so what else is important in that search for a home buyer to know?
I think it's fair to say that most people have a grand idea of what they want, and then there's a reality of what you're going to get.
Oh, 100%.
And I don't want you to realize what your reality is at the time that we put in an offer. We want you to realize your reality much earlier than that.
I like it.
Okay.
So let's talk about max approval versus what you want to afford in that buffer.
Oh, let's talk pre-approval versus fully underwritten as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
This is where we're going to get into offer strategy.
Yeah. So when you have your max approval, let's say you're approved for 550, 500, let's call it 500, and you are shopping at 500, and there's not much wiggle room. And so I know we touched on this at the beginning of the show, but I want to go a little more in depth in that, because a lot of times trying to help a home buyer understand, here's your top approval, here's what you can afford, or here's what you want to afford for your budget, but also to leave that buffer for, the competitive if you need to go over, or, there's some uncertainties in the market.
One thing that we talked about is if you come in at 500, your offer's accepted, you're at the top of your budget, and there's no wiggle room, how are you going to make it through inspection repairs and potential appraisal repairs? And, those are still monetary items that are going to come up. So if you have no wiggle room, let's say you present a home inspection and there's, several line items. Let's say there's 10. If the seller puts it back on you, we negotiated well on the price of the house and some seller concessions, I'm not doing any repairs. If you're at the top of your budget and you're not really, don't have any wiggle room to do the repairs, then it wasn't a good strategy going in.
Correct. Yeah. So there are funds. So you've got your down payment, enough for closing costs. And then you've got, inspection, appraisal. And again, if you've got to make repairs and they're on you, then you've got that money. And if you're
there's a low appraisal, there's going to be a gap. There's all sorts of variables.
And there's a mortgage insurance strategy to help mitigate that also. I think we might see that again. Those were hot in 22, the appraisal gaps. So it's important to understand what you qualify for, and then, leaving yourself a buffer for negotiations and extra funds for repairs and anything that can come up.
So we have completed your offer strategy. We've submitted your offer. It's been accepted. What's next? Our next podcast is going to dive into what happens once you enter the transaction. There's do's and don'ts. There's, having respect for everyone involved. For instance, how many people over the last couple of years wanted to do a home inspection just to determine whether they wanted that house or not?
Yeah. We'll do a deep dive, and also how you're in good hands. We'll touch on that. Mm-hmm. And
unveiling red flags. What are some red flags that you would see with a lender? What are some red flags that you would see with a broker? What are the do's and don'ts of hiring the right person?
How to choose your team.
Yeah.
That's important too. And then we're going to talk about what can go wrong. There's 83 things that can go wrong during a transaction. So the more we talk about those, you can be prepared. And, if you do know about them and it does come up, you know how to address it, and then also how to avoid some of those things. So that's going to be important.
I think that's one thing that you and I have done really well is, seeing the path of where the wheels could fall off and doing everything proactively to avoid that.
Yeah, I think there's a few times where you've called and go, hey, this is what's going on right now. This has the potential to happen. Here's what we can do to avoid that. So there's been multiple times where we've done that. And sometimes the buyers don't even know.
Right.
And because we've handled it and made sure to steer them correctly. And
that podcast will really get into the journey of the transaction and all of the twists and turns behind the scenes that you'll know, because there's decisions you're going to have to make as a buyer, and then the things behind the scenes that you don't know, that most brokers and lenders don't tell you, but I really feel that you need to understand a little bit more. I always feel like I'm a person that if I understand the why I'm doing something, then I understand why I'm doing it a specific way.
I think, I'm the same way. I got to know the why behind things. Mm-hmm. And sometimes
I'm a lot more vested in it as well.
Right.
And we want you to feel the same way.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay.
So do you want to tell a story?
Should we tell the story about how we met?
This is fun. Yeah, I love this story.
So this is where you're going to get to learn our personalities.
And we had a couple people that you guys got to talk about how you met.
Okay. So we have a dear friend named Amy, and she's a title rep, and she went to an event and met Jeremy. And she said, "Oh, I have this broker you have to meet." And she really prides herself on, great matchmaking.
She's a connector for sure.
And she is. And Jeremy says, "No, I'm not interested." I mean, blatantly. And she tells me that, and that doesn't really, bother me. I understand. And about a week or so later, they bump into each other at another event. It was a wine event. That may have helped. And she says, you have to meet Misty. You have to. And he, no. And it was like 7 o'clock at night. And he said, "Listen, if you can get her on the phone the next 10 minutes, okay, I'll talk to her."
And I don't know why. So you'll be like, "Yeah, sure, let's go ahead."
You had a couple glasses of wine. That must have did it.
No, aside from that, like, I don't know. I don't know. But I was like, I don't know why I was hesitant. But
I know
I was
why.
like,
I'll tell you why. So she gets a hold of me, and I'm in my pajamas, no makeup, hair ponytail. And she says, "Hey, he's willing to talk to you, but you got to call him right now." I said, "Okay." So I call him, and literally out of the gate, he says to me, "Listen, I don't need any new friends." And I didn't take offense to that. I have some pretty thick skin. I didn't take any offense to that. What that told me is he's very particular about who he surrounds himself with, right? Who is in your inner circle. I think it's fair to say that you can't trust everybody. I don't want a broker that I need to hold their hand. So he asked,
and to be fair, I'd just gone through a situation where I might have been a little more on guard.
Okay. So we had a very brief conversation, "Hi, hello, how are you?" And we decided to schedule a time to have a deeper conversation. And on that call, he interviewed me. He blatantly interviewed me and asked me so many questions. And again, I didn't take offense to that. I went, okay, he wants to fully understand who I am, how I work, and if this is going to mesh well with him. So then we moved on to, it was like a dating process. Then I
had an onboarding. I told you, I said, I have an onboarding process, and this is how it works. I got to meet with you. Let's spend an hour because I want to understand your business. I want you to understand mine to see
my
if
goals,
that aligns.
Mindset.
All of that. Yeah. And then I remember asking, and you were like, "Is this a counseling session?"
Yeah. So then we finally meet in person. We scheduled an hour, and I think we spent over 4 hours together and then left and I think went and grabbed something to eat. And it has evolved from there. So Jeremy was wrong. He could use some more friends. He just didn't know it was me.
Yeah, no, that was great. Yeah, and I love that. So we finally get the one-on-one consultation. I'm asking her about her business, her goals, and what I loved was that you came in and you were just like, like whatever, just, I was like, okay, she's relaxed. And you just, again, all cards were on the table. And I was like, okay, this is great.
We talked about our career. We talked about where we are now, where we're going. We talked about, future goals professionally. And a lot of those lined up. And
we vibed from the jump.
Yeah.
And then, then me, you, and Jess ended with us going to get.
I think it's fair to say that I am this in the relationship and you are this. And that is very important.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
I think it's a great story.
What are a few qualities about each other that is super important to in the process that benefit our client?
I will tell you what I love is that it's, you're black or white.
Yeah.
It's just like bang, bang, bang. I don't have to guess.
Yeah.
Anything.
We're both straight shooters.
It's like,
honest.
nope, this is it. This is where we're at.
There's no candy coating.
Yeah. And there shouldn't need to be. Yeah. And so it is a relationship where, the communication is just, no holds barred. It was just, everything's on the table. And I like that.
We're honest.
Sometimes you get into situations where, communication, I'm communicating something one way, you're communicating another, and it can convolute and actually confuse a buyer. And I feel like
absolutely.
The way we
What's
talk
going to happen if you're a buyer
linear.
and I tell you one thing and Jeremy tells you something different? You're going to realize that our lack of communication is not happening. You're going to lose confidence. All of that stuff is so important.
Yeah.
I think one thing about us as well is we both wear our heart on our sleeve. And when we enter a transaction, we don't look at you as a client or a buyer. We we become kind of mama bear, papa bear.
Yeah.
And
You're a family member at that point.
yeah, my designated broker asked me at my first renewal, my license renewal, he said, what do you think is the most important thing about being a broker? And he said, there's no right or wrong answer. I just want to know your answer. And I said, if you had a room full of 100 brokers, you would get dozens and dozens of different answers. And I don't know if, a lot of brokers would agree with me, but mine is protection. I am here to protect you from all of the things that can go wrong. I'm here to make sure that you're not taken advantage of. I'm here to make sure that I minimize your anxiety, the stress level, that I present all of your options, that you understand what could happen, with this decision, what could happen with that decision. I am here to protect every part of you in the transaction. And you will find that there's a lot of there's brokers out there that may not lead with that. There's a lot of, how much is my commission? That's kind of what they think about first.
Yeah. And you do see that. And another thing too, what I like about this market right now and going forward is that I feel like, and just the most recent experiences is that we've had a lot of people fall off. They're not in the industry anymore, and so the people that are left right now, there's a difference in the conversation all around. Even from like title and everybody that's involved. People have antennas up right now, like because it is such a tricky market and it's keeping us on our toes. Things are changing 1 week to the next, and so. Going forward, choosing someone that works with a solid team, whether that on the lending side, with the assistants and the processors, also has your title and escrow and your inspection, your inspector, appraisers and all that, having good people that do talk to each other and just make a great experience it is super important, and I think it's going to be more important going forward. So that's kind of where we're going. That's not kind of where we're going. That's where we're going. We're going to deep dive into some things. And again, we are going to talk about things that you normally don't hear. Mm-hmm. We also want to hear from you. So if you have questions, if you have something that you want us to answer for you, please leave it in the comments. We'll address it. You can reach out to us for anything you want directly or in the comments. You'll see Misty's information. You'll have my information, but we're here to guide you. And again, it's going to be a tricky market. And so who you work with is going to be super important in this market and going forward. So I think that's all I have to say.
For today, yes. We set the foundation of where this podcast is headed. And we're really excited to meet new buyers and be able to help you navigate through real estate. Is so different now than it was even a decade ago. And it is very cumbersome, and we want to be able to help you flawlessly execute.
Yep. And so when you pull up the YouTube channel, you want to look for Strike Point Strategies. It's going to be a playlist, and we're going to have all these, just basically the series under that. So you can go back and listen anytime you want. And
I also want you to touch on if someone is a first-time home buyer and they do not think that they're ready at all. I still think that a conversation is really important. So I want you to tell them about, being able to guide them for even if it was a year or two to get them ready. Because if you don't have the proper guidance, you're not going to be ready in a year or two still.
Yeah. So for example, I've had clients come to me and buyers come to me where they say, I know my credit score is not there. I know I want to buy a house. I know I need to.
I don't have a down payment.
I don't have a down payment. I'm just not ready and I'm scared. Where do I start? You're starting. That's where you start right there, is by asking. And even if, let's just say you have a 500 credit score and zero money in the bank, well, now this is a cool process because now we get to coach you through that to get you to the point where you're going to be able to pull that trigger. And I love that scenario because in a world where someone might be in a hopeless situation or feel hopeless, like I'm never going to get there. I'm never going to do that.
There's a lot of people that are not homeowners. They keep telling, how am I ever going to afford a home with the way that, the market is today? And it may not be within the year, it may take 9 months, it may take 18 months. But if you're not reaching out to us to be able to start to unveil where you are, we can never help you understand where you're going. So, and more importantly, I have been there making that phone call if you don't feel comfortable with your credit or your income or your debt to income. It's what we do. It's what we do every day. But it is okay to feel vulnerable with us, to allow us to help you. If you're not reaching out to understand where you need to be going, you're never going to get there.
Right. And
That's
we
what
want to
this
bring
is.
hope to that situation. So even if you think you're never going to qualify or you can't qualify for a home, still reach out to us. Let's have a conversation. There are some things you don't know that we do, and we can help you in that process and help guide you through that. So that's all I have
For today.
For this one. So thanks for watching. Again, like and subscribe. Share this with your friends if you found this valuable, and save it, and be sure to hit that notification so you can be caught up when we release these new series. But that's all I have. Thank you, Misty, and we'll see you on the
Jeremy.
next one.
Yeah. Follow
All right.
us for more Strike Point strategies.
Bye.
Bye.